Testing. Second, stand by. Go ahead.
All of us know something about the Maya, but we've all sort of read about them in ways that make them mysterious, tell stories about how they overpopulated the landscape, how they were incredible writers they had writing. They were incredible astronomers. That they, all these incredible things and artists, look at the artistry, and yet they present them as a group of people who were here for thousands of years, and yet somehow in the last 100 years they make it a boo-boo. How could that be? Something is not right with the story. And I started just looking at the relationship between settlement patterns, or settlement and environment, and evoking the patterns. And I wasn't asking what they were doing, I was just wanting to know what patterns, and assuming that they were good farmers and that the patterns would reflect where they were farming. And the more settlements, the more intense; the less settlements, the less intense. That was the way I looked at the landscape. And I also was given the impression that the Maya of today were practicing an inefficient system that was extensive and wasteful. So those were the starting point. In 1972, when I was first here, first reading things, there's a book by T. Patrick Colbert that would have been a standard text that you might read on the Maya civilization. It said the system was wasteful. And it's wasteful, I believe, because they saw it as shifting agriculture. So if you came to a place and you saw this clearing and with the maize, and then the next year you came and that was all filled with vegetation that looked monte, let's just say, one thing, bush, then you think that, oh, they left that, it's wasted, it's not being used, and they move somewhere else. But as I started looking more closely at my settlement patterns, and of course working with people, not knowing really that they were Maya forest gardeners or that they were good farmers, but I was here and I hired labor in a time when people weren't so much involved in their fields, but talking with them and including them in thoughts and whatever, I started thinking, well, they might know something about what I need to know. And when I started working here at El Pilar, before I was looking at El Pilar, but all this area, I found El Pilar in 1983. But I wasn't like, oh, it's the biggest thing, yeah. I was saying, okay, I want to know the community. I did surveys. I mapped the whole area, about a sampling in an area of about 1,300 square kilometers, say from past Spanish Lookout to here. So if you can think of the square of that area, looking at good lands and poor lands and uplands and lowlands and river and not river. In fact, when I came here, I came from working between Tikal and Yasha. Have you been to Yasha? Anyone been? It's a El Sombrero is a great place to visit, and it's a little eco lodge, very simple. Anyway, nothing like that was there when I started. But what I looked at there, people did not locate near water. And yet the proposal for the Belize River was everyone was located at the river. So my first studies were looking at transects that went from the river up into the interior. And we're here at the biggest site in the entire Belize River area, whatever you hear, this is El Pilar, and it's 10 kilometers from the river. So if Tikal wasn't located on the river, and it's one of the biggest things, and El Pilar is not located on the river, maybe water is important, I don't deny, but the river is not the key. So those were things that I was thinking about. I came from an area where rivers weren't there, came to a place, and I wanted to look at how the river affected settlement and what the settlement was going into the interior. I had no idea I was going to find something like El Pilar. In fact, I would say I would want to avoid monuments. I did not want to have anything. I wanted to focus on the settlements, the Maya houses. And until 1993, so I'd been here almost 10 years, or more than 10 years before I even focused. I did some work here looking at the looters' trenches, but I was focused on the Maya houses, the settlement, the communities, and I did full-scale excavations at samples from the river and the foothills and the uplands. So I was very much focused on and this is one of the places I worked. Wow. I looked at big sites, middle sites, and small sites in the valley, the foothills, and the uplands. So I have a really good sample. I also looked at specialist sites. So one of the sites I wanted to look at had lots of stone tool debris, and one had a lot of pottery, and one had a lot of obsidian, which still to this day I'm the first and only person who has identified an obsidian production site in the lowlands of the Maya area, because I didn't expect it to be. I mean, I found it by happenstance. I'm not sure how that happened, but it's not at a center. People think that those kinds of things would be centralized. Probably the procurement of obsidian, which comes from 300 air kilometers away, was centralized. But who produced who managed the pieces and separated and dealt with the material was not a centered person. They didn't have to. They had the big monuments to show they had power. Yeah. So. And in our discipline, we have this concept of specialization. I don't know if this is relevant to you or not, but I will just say it. We have the concept of attached specialists and entrepreneurial specialists. So things that everybody can do, like making stone tools out of chert, would be less likely attached to an elite household and be specialized. So the places where we find debris of chert tools is not in fancy houses, but a fancy house just 4.5 kilometers from here is in a place I call Laton. That's where we have this obsidian production site. It's not quite as big as this, but it's a big site. And so we call that an attached specialist. I don't know if they were themselves elite and they'd given the privilege, but they had tons and tons and tons of obsidian. And all we find, we had, like in one deposit, I have over 30,000 chips that are debitaged, not blades, but debitaged, things that you don't want. And I don't know if you remember or have heard some of these big caches you find at big centers will have obsidian in it. And I decided it was obsidian. Obsidian was like conspicuous production. So at Laton, there's a small little pyramid, but nothing like we'll see at El Pilar. But they did have this attached specialist, and everyone at that community has more access, relatively speaking, than other sites elsewhere. So they could be the people that distributed the obsidian, and then they save the debitage that gets called in for these big events. Like there's the tomb is called Burial 116. It's in the Temple 1 or the main temple at Tikal, and they say there was tons of obsidian. So let's just say there's 2 tons. I figured the Laton example, they would need like 400 of those called in to produce that, something like that. But you can imagine that's a glue. Imagine how the community is brought together by, I give you the obsidian, but you have to save your debitage, which is not useful except in this privileged way. And when the fit hits the shan, they may take their metate, but they don't take the obsidian. The obsidian is left, doesn't have any currency after the so-called collapse. But that's not food. So anyway, that gives you sort of why I'm here. As I came to be here at El Pilar, I realized that what I was looking at as how is the tropical forest, what makes this tropical forest, and how did the Maya live in the tropical forest? I mean, I think anyone who first comes here thinks, oh my God, look at all the bugs, look at all the different things. In fact, you might just say, oh, it looks like monte because everything looks the same. Well, you see, I bet I always would see leafy things and palms, but that's not like huge differentiation. But I started thinking about, and I started working with economic botanists, and I was saying that, you know, because I learned that the diversity of the Maya forest is relatively low compared to the, come on and look at this, compared to like Amazon. Mm-hmm. And if you're looking at the density of settlement, no matter what you hear about the Amazon, there's no Maya cities, those big cities. Mm-hmm. And if you look, do you know Africa, how long people lived in Africa? We're talking millions of years. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm just giving, so you live millions, look at the density, look at the total. This is diversity, it's low, lower. I mean, 9,000 doesn't seem low, but people have been in Africa for, you know, 2 million, 4 million years, however you want to say it. People have lived in Southeast Asia for certainly, I don't know, 500,000 years. Mm-hmm. They made it over to the New World, you know, maybe 15,000 years ago. And so you can see very much higher diversity in Mesoamerica, which has a really high density of settled agriculture, is lower than this. And my argument was that we would find more diversity where there's less people, and less diversity where there's more people. And in fact, even though we even though we can't say, you know, I mean, the Maya were everywhere. Mm-hmm. But think about I'd say there's 200 houses per square kilometer here. There's places like the foothills where it's about, you know, 40 or 50, and then down in the valley it's around 100. If you look at between Tikal and Yasha, they have transitional areas. There'll be around 40 uplands, which is more around 200. The density, by looking at, or I should say the diversity, looking at the forest here by economic botanists, is less than even if you go to less settled and unsettled. But the fact is they're also unsettled or swampy, so, you know, what are you looking, I mean, you can't find a place that is upland without ancient Maya. So if a botanist wants to find an area that is an example without a habitation, you aren't going to find it. But it's interesting that the dominant plants of the Maya forest, there's 20 dominant plants of the Maya forest, and they are oligarchic, it's called. They occupy maybe 75 to 80% of any area you have here. So they're very dominant. This is what the Maya left. So it's very interesting. The other thing I want to mention, if I can, is the idea that tropical soils are poor. That's also a thing. The Maya were wasteful, that slash and burn is bad, and except how do you, first of all, anywhere, slashing, I mean, if you wanted to change your, in Santa Barbara, if you wanted to change your landscape, you'd have to cut. And we don't burn now in Santa Barbara, but incinerators and burning was very common everywhere. So, I mean, that isn't something that is a priori bad. So why is it bad for this? And then here, if you don't cut, what happens, you know? I mean, it will overwhelm you very quickly. So you have to be managing all the time. And burning will be one of those management tools. But we always think that the Amazon is our example of soil. And the Amazon, as you can see in this picture, the Amazon, I say all of America's, is dominated by poor soils. Very, very little of the area is good soil. And wherever you find settlement, that's where the good soils are. But here, it's up to 50% of the area is good soil. They can't be in it?
Well, this way you're looking more towards the camera.
Oh,
Your
yeah,
face,
okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, what's really interesting is, and I've given lectures to third graders, and I'll say, here is where there's good soil, and here's where it's poor soil. Good soil for farmers and bad soil for farmers. Where do you expect more farmers? And they think it's like some trick, you know. And they say, you know, what do you mean? I said, well, where would you say? Okay, well, where there's better good soil, that'd be more farmers. I said, already you know more than all the Maya archaeologists that I talk with.
Anabel, here, what's defined as good soil? It's like soil
Fertile.
organic matter, or how?
Well, in general, it will have high fertility, which will be measured by pH, by organic matter, by friability. I mean, it's a combination of things. It's things we're working with right now. But I'd basically say it would be a combination. Certainly, you have to have it workable. And fertility and workability aren't always paired. But for the ancient Maya, they weren't plowing. There's no plow. And do you know the word arable? Anyone heard about the word arable? You know what the meaning of arable is?
Getting air in. Yeah,
Arable comes from the Latin arable, or arable. And arable is plowable. Has nothing to do with cultivable or anything. So cultivability is a big picture. Arable is one kind of cultivability. So if you have a plow and you can plow deep clay soils like they do in Spanish Lookout, then it becomes workable. But if you're an ancient Maya, you would probably avoid those areas because they are not very workable. So friability is very important in my measure of fertility. Another thing people always want to say, you know, it goes a corollary with how slash and burn is inefficient. Comes with this idea that you need to invest in agroengineering things. So if you have drained fields or canals or terraces, those mean you've invested, and those are capital investments that are considered evidence of intensification, where skill, labor, and knowledge and wisdom about using lands is not counted. So when they look at slash and burn, they don't look at where they're doing things, what they're doing in there, and they're not looking at the whole cycle, which is very important for me, because only 1/5, and this is probably why they even think of it as wasteful, only 1/5 of the landscape would ever be in my model and how things are used. Only 1/5 of the area would ever be open at one time. 2/5 would be left for regeneration, and 2/5 in mature, and then it would go back. This is a 20-year cycle example, and I'll show you some examples. So here I have a picture sort of where people have found terraces and raised fields. You can see they're all around Tikal. They're not at Tikal. And what's interesting is Tikal is one of the biggest sites there are, and there's no evidence from the standpoint of intensification. And if you look at the modern soil classifications, USDA or FAO, that area says not cultivable, meaning not arable. Good for forestry. Maybe they mean agroforestry, they aren't thinking. But the real point is this is a major ancient Maya center of high density settlement of farmers. And this isn't farmland. I mean, nobody what, you know, did they even compare or think? That's kind of crazy. Kind of crazy. So when you start reimagining what they're doing on this landscape, you know, you start, I mean, and you accept that the Maya knew what they were doing, and they lived there for 3,000 years building a civilization, and they're still here today to talk using the same system. We might reconsider our critique and our easy way of denigrating a system that is developed locally. All of these things, terraces are only put in when the water goes too fast. When you put in drained fields, it's only when the water is too slow. So if it's like the Three Bears just right, you won't see those things. And think about that. That means that the labor, skill, and knowledge that went into managing this forest here was a result of this great accumulation of experience and knowledge that we call the forest gardening to the rescue. How are we going to confront, how can we confront, how should we confront climate change? We're thinking, oh, climate change, but 10,000 years ago, 8,000 years ago, it was cold and dry here. It was cold and dry. Have you noticed it's cold and dry? Are we sweating? So we have to realize climate change is a reality, and what we need to develop is flexible and resilient systems. And if we look at the time frame of the Maya, here they have dealt with systems of change and management, and I say we need to start exploring solutions past. Mm-hmm. Let's see what else I have. Yeah, so basically, I say the beautiful forest we see is dominated by these great, all the hills and what do we call it? All the well-drained hills and mountains. They are shallow soils, rocky, inappropriate for a plow, but they didn't use a plow. A plow was not brought into this area. A cow was not brought into this area until 500 years ago. So what were they doing beforehand? Poor guys. They were living in a way that was much more intimate. You plow, you don't notice the recommendation. You have a cow, it tramples the recommendation. But I realize, and this landscape we're talking about is only 1% of the world's tropics, represent 50% of the area here. Think about that. So where are those third graders going to find their farmers, So we have two problems when we look at how did the Maya use the landscape in the past, and how should we represent that world today. And I don't know if you've looked at my work on archaeology under the canopy. If you want, I can send you lots of stuff on that. But here's just a little idea. I know it seems a little fanciful, but maybe if you remember Stevenson Catherwood. Catherwood was a landscape architect. He didn't know a thing about plants. He had 5 of them. He put them hither and thither. But what he wanted you to think of these monuments as something to be drawn into, to experience. They framed with the architecture of the trees. So he was appreciating that, even though he might not have known a lot about trees. And we don't need to make whole staircases and hard levels. We can give them a little bit of. Your eye will fill things in amazing ways. Give a little bit of effort that this is like where the corner is, and you will see it. But instead, we see them making it up, and really, it's remodeling. It's really a sad story. What people have done is take their own imagination and put it on the monument, and I don't know, is it true? I don't know. If we want to talk, I want to imagine I can do something more authentic, but the traditions of archaeology are fairly troublesome in that way. We clear things, and our process can be pretty destructive. Here's an example. This is Stevenson Catherwood again. This is a clearing in Washington in the 30s, and this is in the 1900s when Talbert Mahler was there. And it turns out that at Tikal, everyone that came in that wanted to photograph the monuments cleared them. So they were undergoing, from about 1900, they were undergoing regeneration for so many times, so that they could have these pretty pictures of the monuments. So that gets us to this house. Have you heard estimates of, we also record looters' trenches. This is a really interesting picture because this pot was found wherever it was looted in Guatemala. Mm-hmm. It was retouched and sold, and this is how it looked like in the U.S. And people who art historians say, we can study these looted items because they're faithful, but I don't know, are they? And I found out by working with there's a collection called the Kerr Kerr collection. He went and photographed a bunch of looted art, and I thought, well, maybe I can use it for looking at, I wanted to see about flora and fauna. This is about flora and fauna, and I found out that compared to actual excavations of burials that have been done by archaeologists versus what's in the Kerr collection overemphasizes human form, and in the collections that come from excavations of archaeologists, you almost never see human form. So these looters are going around, and I don't know, they could be retouching with human or not, but the demand is for human form, not other forms, or plain. Beautiful pots that are just plain. Maybe red and black or something. Okay, so here we are. I think I do want to stand up.
Okay, let's stand by.
Stand by. I'm tired of standing now. I mean, sitting.
Well, I got to give you a little direction if you don't mind.
Okay. So what I want to do now is go and who was it you asked me? Who asked me how many people were here?
Yes, I did.
So has people been to Tikal? Did you find, and when you've gone to these sites, did you ask how many people were there? I mean, you may never see where they live, but did they tell you how many people live somewhere? It doesn't matter, but okay. I mean, so like if you go to Caracol, they'll say 100,000 people lived at Caracol, and in 100,000 square kilometers. So they want to say 1,000 people per square kilometer. I've heard modifications about 500, but nowhere in the pre-industrial agrarian world do we find much more than 200. This is documented pre-industrial data, like from medieval Europe, from China, places where it was pre-industrial. So we need to think, the people here didn't have 747s that would bring them ramen noodles when they had a pandemic, So they had to live right off this landscape. And they had to walk to get it all. Now, walking is very nice, Walking, especially if people were here, you'd probably be seeing people, there'd be lively things, maybe people selling pupusas or something, Yeah. But I want to get over in the middle here. Historians that the hummingbird was the protector of flowers and gardens. And they definitely like flowers, and they're definitely found in gardens. But if you look bigger, again, Maya are always considered exceptional. They're not exceptional. They're part of a Mesoamerican life, and the things that developed here developed out of a greater Mesoamerican world. I did the little project I did trying to look at flora and fauna on the pottery was with a woman who specialized in central Mexico. And she says, she really doesn't like this idea like Tsunun. Do you know that hummingbirds for the Aztec are the warriors? And has anyone gotten close to a hummingbird? Woo, they will go after you. So they protect the flowers and the thing, but if the Maya hummingbird is protecting the flowers, but the Aztec is the warrior, it's the same thing. So probably the same thing here, just to give you. So here I have a Maya house. It's almost all primary living spaces are around a patio. They may not enclose, like this one encloses. They have 5 structures that enclose this patio, but they'll have patio. They may just have 2, but it'll be sort of related to personal public, their household space. Each structure is facing onto it. Every one of these structures has a doorway opening onto this space, so this space was accessible and used. This is an Eastern shrine at Tikal. I'd say 25% of the primary groups have an Eastern shrine. Here we don't have that many, but this site had it. I was very excited. It was all looted, but oh well. This building on the south is the largest, and you can see not only is it positioned higher, but even inside we'll see that goes higher. So I always ask people, do you know anything have you ever heard of this thing like Your Royal Highness? Yeah. So they don't talk about Your Royal Lowness, or they talk about the court, the high court. And have you been to a court? The physical location of the person who's judging you, you have to look up. So this concept of highness is something universal, and I just want to say that you can see it here, and I will give a little thing. And then the northern structure, this one that I was mentioning, you can hardly see it now, but this one is very large. And if you look at the space, when I had it, I had it thatched and I put in a little hammock. You could imagine that all the hammocks for sleeping could have been there, and it would be very comfortable. I say here, the northern spacious structure would be a comfortable for privacy, relaxation, and sleeping. I think we have our forest bather outside thinking about going inside to her. We might imagine the other buildings serving other household needs. Like I say, I think that this was a kitchen. We know this is a shrine. This is a very prominent building. This is probably not where people live. And this one is certainly a private sector. I'm not sure how to describe it. It's a lot more formal than this big one. And it has a little bench in the back. Where I was sitting was a bench. And in that bench was a small burial with lots of spindle whorls and a little, like, I don't know, ink spot or something. I don't know. But anyway, there's something special about this. And some people, like who have excavated in Copan, say, oh, this is the patriarch. But I'd like to call this the matriarch. Just to be proposing an alternative. I can't prove one thing or another, nor can they. So that's my thought. I want to talk a little about population. What Maya archaeologists have done in the past is just count structures. So I remember I said there's about 200 structures per square kilometer here at El Pilar. And we have 20 square kilometers, so you can get an idea of that there's a lot. But they're shaped in different ways. So we have small structures that are isolated. We have compounds like this. And what people have done, the Maya archaeologists will say, okay, there's 200 structures, 90% are occupied at one time. The average house is 5 people, 5.5, but let's just say 5. So let's start with 200, reduce it by something. Well, let's say by 220, reduce it to 200 times 5, and you get 1,000. But in your house, even your house in Las Cruces, I suspect you can distinguish when people come in. If I came in, I would distinguish between a toilet area, a sink area, a kitchen area, a bedroom area. There'll be features in those rooms, even though you have one house that's all one structure, that there's differentiation. Now, here, if you ask anybody who's a Maya, lived here, grew up here, they play outside, they don't live inside, it's not cold. I mean, obviously if it rained, they probably will be looking for something more, but they won't be living in spaces like we are. So what we're seeing here are differentiation in the absolute areas for activities that would be household activities. Mm-hmm. And like I said, they all look onto here. What's really interesting is every building here, every one of them is constructed differently. So if you think of what your living room is like, or what your kitchen is like, or what your bedroom is like, they represent key features that are distinguishable. And so I enlist you to imagine that here. And I think this is just one household, not 5. If I said it was 5 structures, we divide it, we times it times 5, it'd be 25 people. There may have been a lot more here. This is bigger, there's no question, than some of the others. But if we want to talk about an average, there were 5 people here. Mm-hmm. And there's a little house with 2 structures over there. There's 5 people there too. But I've actually gone through and made, because there's there's, I'd say, less than 10% are big houses. And when you start going and making, say this has 10 and the medium has 7 and the small have 5 and the smallest have 2 or something, you end up with the same as if it were divided by 5. Mm-hmm. So I want you to think about how people use space, what they're presenting in it, what kind of thing, if you're hosting or sleeping or cooking. And one thing I decided is that no single house could be a permanent house unless it had 2 structures, because a kitchen is essential. And kitchens were always outside, or apart, right?
Still are.
Yeah, still are. And why? There are 2 things. It's interesting. I think it's more complicated. I used to think just fire. Yeah, it could burn down. Yeah. But as it turns out, they are easy to renovate. Even if this is the place, if you need one new post, you can renovate them very easily. And the word is expendable, but I don't think it's expendable. You cannot renovate your house. It's very hard to put a new post in a house. So you work very hard to make that a good house. I mean, good foundation and good posts. But things can, whatever happens to the kitchen can be more easily replaced. So they said expendable. But the other thing that's very interesting is that even though they say expendable, the thing is that the smoke is a preservative. So you don't have to make such a closely fit thatching because the smoke will be preserving it, and it will even preserve the posts. And you only have 4 posts, and they don't have to be substantial. So I say that because the next thing I'm going to start talking about, we talk about people eating here. So I want to show that they could, if there was a milpa cycle, they could eat here. We add with 1/5 of the landscape. I have these data. My total available land is about 20 square kilometers here. Cultivable, remember that does not mean arable. It means cultivable with a skill, labor, and a stick. I have 13.2 square kilometers. What you have to do with that is divide it by 5. Remember I said if you're going to complement the whole circuit, you have to be able to have it last in this model 20 years. You have to have regeneration and mature. So that leaves any one time in the year asynchronously open will be 2.7 square kilometers. But that's starting, it would be 4 years, and then in 4 years it would be regenerative. And then after 8 years of that, it would be mature. And then if that's the one they're going to go back to, in 20 years, they would be resuming that. And it's asynchronous. So you have to imagine that it's not a seething sea of milpa. But when you think of it in this regenerative form, you start thinking, if you're a northern a non-tropical person, you think that that's wasteful. Not thinking, what are they getting out of the succession, the regenerative, and what are they getting out of the mature? We know, I mean, around here there's mamey that looks just like it does down in somebody's garden here. So there's fruit going to come out of here, there's going to be medicine coming out of here, and there's going to be the posts for construction, the beams and rafters for the roofs, and the thatching. Think about, I have 2,000 houses that will be thatched here. And at one point, nearly all of them would have been thatched. And if that's the case, I decided that I would create a model of that. And if I were to build and thatch 50 houses for 1 year for 40 years, because people say they last 50 years, or 60. Some people even say 60. I just was talking to someone yesterday, I don't know who, I don't remember now, but they said, my mother's last 60 years. Well, okay, well, if I say 40, that's not exaggerating. I want to, oh, he needs some milk?
Yeah.
That's a long time he's been around. Can you want to stop for a minute? Had to be, one way or the other. Plus, in this area it would be 2.64, but and that means that double that, 5.28, would be in regeneration, and also 5.28 would be in regeneration any one time. But this is an asynchronous cycle. I think if you're interested, I can send you one on the email. You can remind me. But this is a picture of it static, and the very light ones are milpa. The next light ones are the regeneration, and the slightly darker ones are forest, and the very dark ones are permanently in forest because they're too steep. We control for 15% and say they're not. But if you see this in my, it's animated. You can see it moving, and you can get a better picture that it's shifting agriculture, but that's a denigrating way of not shifting agriculture, it's shifting fields for the whole system, because we're talking about orchards and construction materials and so forth. So I took this and I decided that, certainly all the regenerative and mature were potential for getting other materials. And these are the kinds of materials. This is just to say you need posts.
I see that one there.
You need posts and beams and whatnot, you know. This is a poster I made. I'm going to have to update it right now because I've come up with new things. But just to do 50 houses a year, so after 40 years I would have, everything would be poled and thatched and built, but then there'd be the next one ready to be the next 50 that need to be fixed again. And this is a big house. This would be a house like this. It's not fair, but I have small, medium, and large. So, but I wanted to get a upper estimate to see what I was dealing with, and it's pretty radical. I'm not sure, but I need 600 posts. That would be 53 per 11 square kilometers. I'd need beams. I'd need 60 beams for 16 square kilometers, and I need 60 beams, rafters for 16 square kilometers. And really, the big thing is I would need 779 leaves per square kilometer, and that's not possible. I just had a meeting with my counselors and my collaborators on the Maya on building the Maya house, and they were like, you could tell that's just not possible. So this is not. I mean, first of all, okay, so there's two ways. There are several ways I can modify this number. One is by, and I asked them if the house was half the size, you would just half the leaves. They said yes, that's a way to do it. So obviously I can look at small, medium, large. But this is the excellent house with the most. It's one house like this size house, that this is one here, would take 10,000 leaves of guano. This is the bay leaf. Do you have bay leaf where you are?
Yeah.
But you also have a lot of guano, of corozo, more corozo. Anyway, and and that area had so much water, and the chib was really, the pacaya was really abundant in those areas. Anyway, so this number is not realistically, I don't know about these numbers. They're high too, because that's per square kilometer per year. Wow. So every year you need 53 posts, and there's only 17 trees that give you posts. Every year you need 60 and 60, 120 beams and rafters, So I'm still working on that, but those are less troubling right now than this. So the first thing, remember I said that my second house or my secondary houses probably don't have the same need.
And why were you working off of this was built over 40 years?
Because they say the house will last 40 years.
Oh, 40, I see. They would have
40.
to rebuild.
And that I had to divide it by something. I couldn't build 2,000 at once.
Sure.
So I wanted to build 50 at once. I just divided by 40,
Yeah.
And so that,
Wow.
it just like with the 20-year milpa, I had to have, it doesn't mean, someone had to start. So I have to pretend there's a start.
Right.
And certainly the houses were built probably over 3,000 years and, changed and whatever. But certainly between 300, for the 300 years between 600 and 900 AD, they had roofs.
Right.
Yeah. Even if you reduce it by 90% to 90%, it's a lot.
Yeah.
So one way I can change this is by looking at small, medium, large, and that will make a change.
Yeah.
But another way I could do it is say, okay, if it's the kitchen or a secondary house, it's built differently. It's more expendable. It can be rebuilt more easily. That's what expendable is, the wrong term. It can be more easily rebuilt. A house where you put the posts and you invest in the roofing and you keep it dry, that is, you can't replace easily. Although, interestingly, this thing called the moi, I don't know, do you have rounded ends on do your houses? Do you have houses that are guano where you are? They have to have a rounded end.
Yes.
Because structurally you cannot build with guano without having it circular. With corozo, you have to have it square. But with that, you have to have the end need to be round. And I looked up, it's great, there's literature in Europe on thatching, and it's the same thing with grass. You have to, they don't make it quite as round. That's called a moi. It has a special term. It's very exciting.
Annabelle, I was wondering for the Milpa if you have more insight on like species selection or exactly like what the polycultures look like?
Well, we have data from what we find in the archaeological material, and we have plenty, you know, what you might want to see is what Scott has done, that 497, get that article. Then you would see some of the things they use. But you have to say, if it's an annual and needs sun, this is the collection that you might find in the sun thing. And I mean, I think he says like 80 or 90% are perennials. So depending, you know, like a chote can be in the sun. So can, for that matter, some bushes like cacao, but it wants shade. So you have to look at the compendium and see what works. And I mean, you can also look at contemporary, if you're interested, look at my book and the bibliography, look at what we have, what people have in their home gardens today. Of course, they have citrus, they have mango, they have banana, they have plantain. All those are part of the repertoire today, which also fulfill the similar kind of role.
Right. Is there any data on, I guess, either historically or contemporarily, how people approach a multistrata, like, I guess, spacings of like emerging canopy versus like...
They're working with the natural process, so, I mean, I think you can look I mean, I haven't looked at those kinds of things specifically, but I mean, when I did my house, I just put everything in. Now I have a very shaded garden, so if you want sun, you won't find it in. But I have a teeny little space, you know. I don't know how much space you have, but I mean, I have a 50 by 100 lot with a house on it. So I'd rather have more trees, though it does limit. I can't have obel. Chaya doesn't like it so much, you know. You don't have many flowers. Heliconia is okay. Well, I mean, I'm not there that much anyway. So, you know, whatever. Anyway, that's just to give you a sense, we're dealing with something very complicated, sophisticated, and very, very enveloped in this place. And for people to downplay the forest garden as relegating it to shifting agriculture and you know, slash and burn. It is slash and burn, but it's not slash, burn, and leave. People use the word fallow. Don't dare use that. It's like fallow is the unseeded plowed land. And that, again, is fallow implies abandoning. Just like these monuments are called abandoned. Neglect I will take, but they weren't abandoned. The Maya were probably somewhere around here not taking care of that in the time that the Spanish first arrived. But by the time they're coming through here, you know, with Tipu and other places, you know, that was 100 years after the first contact. 90% of the population was dead. So there wasn't a management. And if you look at this as an unmanaged landscape and it's not related to people who are managing, and you see the slash and burn, you're not going to recognize this as a relic of a forest garden. The 20 dominant plants here are all useful. Can't be an accident. So I want to just go up and talk about Your Royal Highness here. Please note, you walk up, you have to look up to me.
Yes.
Continue, imagine that, looking up to me. So we're hoping we'll get more shade in here. But this is the reception. This is like the living room. This is where everything happened. And look, no matter how you come in, you're going to have to be looking up here. This is an impressive place. Yes. This had a corbelled arch. When I go and do my thatching, this doesn't get counted. This had corbelled arch and has 3 file room. The last file probably was falling down, and they took away. We have evidence that they took away the retaining wall, of course, and had a thing, and probably built this up because this staircase we came up goes underneath this thing. So this was a very impressive place, and it was probably meant to be somehow in this barrio, in this neighborhood, to be recognized as such. And if it has this oratory, this is a little pyramid. And you can see it would have been something important, you know.
Did you unearth this?
Yes, this was a big mound.
Yes.
it all. I mean, well, you'll see the bigger mounds. But this, well, yeah. When we talk about, this is a nice thing. This is the highest point on this building, and this is the highest point. But this is high because it has all those integrated parts of the wall. Have you been to Caracol?
No.
Okay. Well, at Caracol, they
Nonsense.
and Sunantunich is the same,
Yep.
but Caracol has examples that are really germane to this thing. So if I know that this is the highest point, I know that walls were at least that high. I could have built all of these straight, and then it would be imagining that height, because they say, oh, it was that high, but in fact that will take your eye and make you think that was the top, which it is not, because the top went higher and this was a corbel. So if I straighten this out to say at least they're that high, I would give you the impression that was the height of this. And your eye really, really takes those things in. And here I think that you can see that this wasn't the end of that this must have gone much higher.
Right.
Yeah. And
How tall?
Well-
if you think about the people, how tall were the people, and how tall?
they're just as tall as any people.
Yeah.
But this is, first of all, you'll see this is less than a meter wide, and so it was actually at the sort of edge of if it was going to last for a long time. But when I mean, all they needed to do was have it last for them to be here.
Mm-hmm.
So you ask how tall it is. See these big stones here, and that one. This one is not broken up. This one is the complete square. It's what happens when you're building a vault is you have a spring of the vault that might have been about here, and that was at the corner at the point where they're going to corbel, where they're going to bring it in, and that's bearing all the weight. It's pushing down on these things. The debris that happened here was all related to the compromise of the roof when it wasn't maintained, and then of course everything falls. Gravity, as I can say, gravity not just a good idea. What happens? It's the law. Things will fall down. Okay. I could tell you a lot more, but I think we want to move out of here. It's hot. Anyway, this is a doorway, and this is a doorway that was shut,
So did the house evolved over time?
Yeah, probably, not, yeah, over time. Here's an example of a change. There's some looting in there. Sure, there's something underneath here. But look what happened. This is their first wall. And then they enlarged this here.
Yeah.
And because it's not legal to have the bench sticking out, they put this here that was part of the wall. But of course, it's not integrated, and it fell down.
Yes. Yes.
It narrowed this, but it created. But it allowed this to happen. So that's a change. If you want, we can walk around. I can show you why we know it's 3 files of rooms, but you can take that for granted. We can see it another time.
Oh, okay.
You want to? Yes?
Yes, I would love
Okay,
to.
let's
Yes.
walk around. Now, let me show.
Sorry.
I will tell you what I love. These things will not hurt this, but this is Ishkanan. And that's going to be, it's a perennial and it has roots. These should be taken out. These are sweet water, and everything that's sweet, like this would have been greener if it was still over. But these are okay. These are not going to hurt. This is hurting if we're talking about maintenance. So you may notice, we can stand over here, it'll be nicer. You may notice, if you look at ancient Maya architecture, you can see that they have things I call molding. This thing, it's kind of disappeared here, I guess, but this went all the way around when it was first exposed. This was, and I thought it was, I always call it a molding because it looks that way. Here the wall comes down and it's a molding, but that's actually like a slab. They designed the house, maybe your architect friend will know, they designed the house before they put down the walls. I mean, it's really overbuilt. And this is a foundation platform upon which the entire building is built. And this goes around, and if you look, you can watch what happens with it. It comes around here and then comes...
Do you know if it's a whole platform or is it just a slab?
Well, people It's a slab.
Yeah.
But people who have excavated show it goes underneath everything here.
Oh, okay.
It's a slab.
Yeah.
It's not a molding. These walls are placed on
top.
it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and these walls, well, anyway, so here it comes around. Now here, and when I was first excavated, you stop seeing, it comes here and then sort of disappears.
Yeah.
So I drew this originally, I think I might even, as a U shape. Because I knew there was something here. See, here's a bench, and something came out here. This wall is here. There's a wall here. And so I thought this was open, like a patio. I thought that looked nice. And then here's the next room. Well, I had some people who know a lot more about my architecture here. Rudy Larios, for example. And he just felt, you see there's no molding here.
Right.
So if I was proposing that it was a U, it'd be a molding here, a molding here, a molding here, molding here, molding here, and so, and there's no molding there.
Right.
When we expose, you'll just have to believe it because he did a little test going from somewhere here all the way out and showed me that there had to have been, but that the plaster here just went crack, 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 and then disappeared. That this had a retaining wall here that was probably a wall that was a third file of rooms that connected right between where you are and this opening here, this way. So in fact, my drawing of a U was discounting the value of this knowledge that earlier archaeologists could share with me. So we now know this is 3 files of room. One was here, and one was there, and they were all 3 corbelled arches. But I already mentioned that the walls here are fairly narrow for holding the corbel, and this was clearly falling down, so they disassembled it, and we believe, because when you come back over here, you'll start seeing the molding. Here's the molding starting back.
Yeah, it's starting again,
Yeah. And here's another one of those things from the corbel that's falling from here. Well, see, this is okay. So what happened was this staircase that we know is underneath here and here, they built the platform out. They knew no one was going to go on the back, you know. Maybe they put a bunch of trees there and still made an impressive front that lasted a little bit of time. I wonder where my team is. Guess it took longer. Well, we'll walk around quickly. But actually, I don't know, if you want to see the whole thing, we're gonna have to move.
Yep.
Brass mobile, brass mobile, brass mobile.
You're the one who's dictating what we're gonna do.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can walk up and I can call him on a, from up there. Let's go to the high part. Oh, we didn't eat lunch. Better eat lunch.
Somebody else.
Cleared the whole thing to support these 500 or 1,000 people or square kilometer. Where did they get the posts for the houses? Where was the thatch? Even though mine are overestimate, they tell you. We've got to start thinking about that. It's a travel buddy, huh?
Even like the biodiversity sometimes on just one tree.
Well, yeah, just look what's on it, you mean.
Oh my gosh, it's so, interesting.
What kind of yard do you have?
Well, yeah, I was saying earlier, it feels really early stage.
Graded
I
land.
guess
Were there construction methods different from other cultures, or
Brass mobile, brass mobile, brass mobile.
in terms of their construction methods, similar to other cultures? Were they special in any way? Post and beam?
They had to know what I mean, not just anything as a post. It has to have the heart, which is called in Maya chulul, and in Yucatec Maya that's the life force, but also the heartwood.
Yeah.
And what wood would they use for the posts?
What?
What wood do they use for the posts?
17 different trees. I have the list, but not every tree. There's 61 trees that I've cataloged that they use for construction, and I have 140 here.
Okay.
And mahogany, one of the dominant plants of the Maya forest, is not used at all. It's brittle at those sizes. It doesn't have heartwood. Yeah, it's a dominant plant.
What are they doing, a cabbage spark?
Yeah, manchits, definitely.
Yeah.
The canopy, was it helpful to the homes, obviously, and in what way?
To what?
Was the canopy help protect the homes?
Well, you know, if you want a good roof, you do not want trees near it because it won't last as long. Drop, and you want the roofs more open to the sun. I don't like that, but it doesn't mean you don't have trees nearby, but they're not good near a thatch roof. This all drains, everything from there drains into an aguada over there. We always consider this a flavor of a market. We don't know if it is or isn't. It reminds us of a market. But this actually looks more pyramidal. Sinoon was probably at 3 meters. This is a little more, like 4. But they're all over. Look it up here where we're going.
Yeah.
Would you mind answering that again? I'm recording now.
Okay.
So in terms of
Excavation everywhere. Every plaza in this area, I've done excavation. And what my first inquest here was looking at the chronologies available in the looters trench. There were 65 looters trenches here, probably more now. But once we established ourselves in '93, that looting has been diminished. But in terms of excavation, the first thing I did was look at access ways, corners, where stairways were. Those were my first questions. Then I did, in '95, I spent a lot of time here. That's when we established the boundaries, and also did started a tunnel through a temple that we call Shigna, or EP7, up in one of the major plazas we'll see later. But excavations all over here, and we have some excavations I did up here. I got a little prize from the World Monuments, got a little grant, and did some consolidation that you can see up in this power area. And there's other openings around, but
can you say again that you excavated everything? You covered
I didn't excavate everywhere. There's excavations, every plaza, but to conserve and make sure they do not get deteriorated, we backfill. So conservation has several ways. You could backfill them so that they're protected underneath the excavation. You still excavated and destroyed something. Then and then there's that way, or you could actually open them up, expose them, and consolidate them like we saw at Sunoon. There's no moving beyond the evidence there. Or you could decide that was a big temple, like what you see at Calpech, completely remodeled, things that have, there must have been a corbel here, so we're going to put a corbel here. So it goes everything from excavating and backfilling to completely imagining what it might have looked like. And I would never do that.
And so, and the plan for the future is to excavate again what's been backfilled to have.
No, I would say my expectation is that we'd create this in a landscape. Really, the Mexicanidad is very beautiful. Create this as a landscape, not not as we see today, but where we actually see all the, you know, palms and ferns and whatever in a beautiful landscape way. And those areas where I did excavate, and we want to consolidate, because you can't just expose them. You have to consolidate them, otherwise, you know, they're going to go through the same deterioration.
What does consolidate mean?
Making sure that the stones are stable, that you have, you know, some kind of stucco in there that's holding it together, that you've thought of what, you know, what's around, especially if you keep it under the canopy and don't let, like I showed that Ashkenaz growing, you know, make sure that the things that are perennial are removed, and the things that are like ferns that don't do any damage, or mold, you know, other kinds of things can be on there. Just plan it as a landscape with what I call the hardscape and the softscape.
Is your plan to open it up to more of the public, or what do you think?
I am Anabel Ford. I'm a big, long career behind me. I have a dream. I hope someone will be able to take it up. I cannot do anything here myself. I have to do it in collaboration, in working with, I mean, if somebody like the Institute of Archaeology wanted something and they were going to help finance, or I paired in financing, it's a big financial commitment when you go do things like that. I, myself, I've been available for 41 years, and as long as I'm like on the hoof, maybe I still am.
You've done so much.
But I mean, at least people are not cutting most of the trees. They still don't imagine this is a live area, that a tree will die and you need to be having plants growing and thinking of it as a dynamic landscape. But maybe that will happen too. And this is where people, the forest gardeners, should be helping us. This is where they should rescue us, not just around the world and for our food, but if we're going to conserve monuments and teach people about the forest garden, this is a place to do it. I mean, don't you wonder what all these trees are and how they got here? You know, what does that mean in terms of what the ancient Maya actually cultivated and allowed to be here, and how is their alliance with the nature promoting this beautiful forest? Those are the questions I have.
Can you tell me on camera what the issue was that the rangers were talking about of property?
Oh, well, you know, if
That's relevant.
you have, I mean, it's a protected area has boundaries, and those boundaries are created by the government, and the government has to stand up and manage it and maintain it, and the boundaries haven't been completely watched, and now they're starting to watch them. We had a big event, I don't know if you remember that 2020, anything happened to you in 2020? Anyway, something happened, and people really changed all their habits. And so now they're starting to look back at, starting to go around and manage this boundaries. You have to, I mean, you know, the boundaries have to be maintained. So now they were walking and saw that somebody was planning to take 3 parcels that are into the protected area. The southern boundary has lines going north into the
So they called the police?
Yeah, so as you heard, I wasn't here, but they called the Institute of Archaeology to explain what they had there, and there's a man with a stadia rod, and, you know, all the equipment out there. I wasn't here. They just showed me the pictures, and then what they did was they verified there was a problem. They brought the police up, and they cited them. They gave him a warning. So it's now I really don't quite understand what's going on, but obviously they're trying to halt that, and they're trying to work with lands to find out what happened. Obviously, someone,
Protect the boundaries.
yeah, they have to protect the boundaries. So this is a problem they had when they didn't pay attention just for a little while. It didn't even matter that they just went out there, and all of a sudden someone's there cutting property lines in the boundaries of El Pilar that were established in 1995, were registered with statutory instrument, were part of a big BTIA with Godsman Ellis, and the NARMAP, a big program that funded the funds that needed to get lands, and my project involved in helping create those boundaries. Just like any property, you need to.
Excuse me, I'm just going to get a shot of Anabel walking for about 30 feet. Thank you.
Both there. Okay.
I was carrying on.
Go ahead.
Okay, just a minute. I will take another happy shot of plants.
Okay, the rest of you can go.
Feeling.
Yeah.
So it is counseling.
I'm talking about their feelings.
Adjacent, yeah, sure.
No, I'm sure it's pretty constructive, I'm sure, you know.
How many
You get
people
these
come
to get
together?
Group sizes vary, but I'd say maybe on average like 8 people and 2 facilitators.
So that's
And how did you get into that?
I
I'm
joined
still looking for an online job.
Yeah. I joined one of these groups as a participant maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and then did their training, and then started facilitating with them.
Interesting.
can they get mad or they are happy
I
or
would say most sessions someone's crying. Last session I was a part of, there was like big outbursts of anger.
at the other person or just in general?
Yeah, at other people. In the
They
group.
know the people or
Yeah, things come up.
ay
So
ay
you
ay.
use counseling methods?
Yes, these particular groups, some of the things they got rely on is nonviolent communication, internal family systems, which is used a lot in counseling.
Motivational interviewing or?
Not that so much. Yeah, it's a little different in like a group setting. A lot of the basis for it are like T groups or like process groups. So yeah, kind of like seeing what happens in the moment and how people are relating to each other in the moment. Is kind of the basis for what's shared. Yeah.
They don't have other people in real time, not on a Zoom that they can do that with or
Yeah.
And different perspectives.
Yeah.
This is great. I gotta write this down. I have to take a look at this.
Authentic
Because I'm a substance use counselor, you know, this works right in there. To counsel people. To be there and, you know.
do they have that need here? I think.
Counseling?
Yeah, and substance abuse.
Oh yeah, big time, yeah.
But they don't want help. No.
Yes and no, it's very hard.
The world of collecting chicle. We're 66 feet or 20 meters above the surface at the west. It says here that chicle was harvested here in the 1870s after the American Civil War, which resulted in a growing desire for chewing gum. The exhaustion of gum resources in the Northeast. Oh, that's too fun! Do you know what they say? You know how all kids, not just 3-month-old kids, love to be thrown around. They need stimulation for their inner ear,
Yeah.
and so they're learning balance. And so it's fun, but for us, we don't need any more stimulation. We get dizzy.
Yeah, it's like roller coasters aren't fun.
Yeah, right.
25.
Yeah, no, it's part of that whole. Who's owners now? Is it still the Stevens? Who is the person?
I can't remember the last name, but I also can't remember the first name.
Teo and Marcus.
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah. Teo, yeah, that's who is it, yeah. And Marcos, so she's not married to that other guy. Teo has been, yeah, I remember. She's Katie Stevens, I don't know if she's still around. Her mother, I know her mother. But I like that. I mean, I don't know how it looks now. I knew it when it was established by this guy, Fred Prost, who first established it. But it's a nice location in that oxbow. There's water all around. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is our second time there.
Oh, really?
Oh, really? So you always take your break. You go to Paris Nest. Okay, we got to move on. I hadn't yet dedicated my career to that, but I had already been to Mesoamerica.
Say,
You can do more than one take, but
oh, good.
okay. And,
Yeah, but I'm gonna
and
be.
you are your name?
My name is Barbara, and this is the first time I've visited El Pilar. My impression of El Pilar, I'm really very impressed about the site. I've been to other ruins, to other Mayan ruin sites, and this one is a really big site for my feeling, and the understanding of that a lot of these ruins have been excavated and then backfilled again. It amazes me. I love the idea of being able to just visualize how this all looks and looked, and how they lived, and how the Mayans lived within the nature. And
Does it seem a good method that they're using to preserve it?
yes,
You could say it in yourself.
yeah, I think it's a wonderful method to preserve the Mayan ruins this way. Now where I'm understanding more about erosion, about how they would be damaged otherwise, you know. So I love the archaeology under the canopy.
What's the value for people in modern society to know about this culture? Any thoughts?
Okay, don't you want to ask these guys?
I'm going to ask him in a moment. Well, maybe you don't want that question.
Yeah, no,
Okay,
I
so-
actually I wanted to. That was it, and I wanted
Okay,
to give
is there
them like
anything
a
else
little.
you'd like to say?
I definitely will have to come back, or I want to come back, because I probably only saw a quarter of what I can see and learn about the Mayan culture here in El Pilar.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Barbara, what's your last name?
My last name is Dahl, Barbara Dahl.
Spell it.
D-A-E-L.
Okay, thanks, Barbara. Well, would you guys mind introducing yourselves?
Sure. My name is Audrey De Los Reyes.
I'm Brandon Wong, and this is Santi.
And how did you end up here today? Well, maybe you could answer.
Yeah, sure. So we currently live in Guatemala and have become really interested in agroforestry and forest gardening. And so that's how I first heard about the Maya forest gardeners, and then got curious to come see some of the work here in person.
And what did you think of the tour today by Anabel Ford?
Yeah,
Incredible.
very special to be here with her,
And they won't hear my question, so can you say it's special to be with Anabel Ford there or something
Oh,
like
yeah,
that?
yeah.
Go ahead. Second.
it's really special to be here today with Anabel Ford, and doing a tour with her feels very unique from her many, many decades of work here. Very special monuments that are all across the site, and be able to hear the history as well as the history of excavation, and what the craft of archaeology looks like in practice is really special to experience through her lived experience.
And your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it was incredible. I've been to Tikal and other sites, but hearing from her, Anabel Ford's voice of the work and decades that goes into researching, mapping, and excavating and refilling, and all of the thought process, it's really not, destined to be a tourist attraction that's shiny like Disneyland. It's rather these Mayan monuments. I can tell there's been a lot of love and care put into it, so that not only we can preserve them the best we can, but also learn from them, and I think that's really special.
I'm not quite done.
Yeah.
Tell me what you think about forest gardening, the value of it, and a little bit about what you're doing.
Yeah. Maybe here's like one of the first things that came to mind was I did a permaculture course in Lake Atitlan in Guatemala, and I met another Maya farmer there, and he was describing a lot of practices he were doing, like around organic, regenerative farming and composting and a lot of other things. And I remember asking him, like, why are you farming this way when all your peers are not? And something he said in Spanish, he said, agroecológico es ancestral, or agroecological is ancestral. And I think even like from the moment he said that, it really kind of sparked a seed for me. And then I think actually being here, both like the big kind of high level context and history of the Maya site, as well as about like the Maya forest gardening in particular, it's really, neat to see it playing out here on the site, and hearing Anabel talk about everything from some of the species they were using, how it integrates into food and shelter, how it relates to her work, thinking about the capacity of the site, what it might have looked like. So I think it's just, I really appreciate the perspective of taking in Maya history, also from the perspective of what was and what is the landscape and the plants and everything around it.
Do you have any further thoughts about the value of proper forest gardening to climate change and all types of water, climate, erosion, etc.?
Yeah, sure. So I think for me, learning about forest gardening or agroforestry more generally, I think one question I often think about is, where does the fertility in the soil come from? And that, let's say, trees in particular, being a really powerful way to build fertility in the soil, both through the leaf litter, if you're pruning trees, it coming to the ground, but basically allowing like a consortium of plants to help provide the fertility over time into the system. And so I think that kind of like input independence, or at least more ecological ways of farming or growing food are very interesting. And so to be in a place where, that is the historical context of what was done here is, I think, very inspiring for where we are today with the climate crisis, and thinking about what are the ways in which we want to grow food, grow the materials for shelter, moderate the temperature for our living. I think these are all human needs that apply just as much today as they did 4,000 years ago, based on being biological beings in human bodies. I think one place to look for inspiration is, if they lived here for thousands of years ecologically, what were they doing, and how might we move towards similar ways to meet all of our needs within the means of the living planet.
Nice. You're very articulate. Too, but okay. Anything else, or is that covered, do you think?
Yeah, I think that's maybe a good overview.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
She's ready to have us, we go. She's still working out that detailed soil map, so that we can look at the relationship between houses, primary and secondary houses, and what.
And how long have you tried this here? 2.5 years, probably.
There's something made by someone from UC.
Yeah.
And I met Cynthia when she came with a delegation to Santa Barbara.
I led the delegation.
You led the
that
delegation?
An award.
Yeah.
Gardners are not just taken for granted, but we are the contributors of knowledge and practice, So it was very important for him to be recognized, because he represents us.
So how long have you been here?
3 days.
And I'm going back next Wednesday.
Yeah.
Here's our baby doing.
He really likes a bumpy road, and whenever we stop, he wakes up and. Yeah.
So wise.
No, but he's been doing really well, huh?
He's pretty easy.
Very easy, yeah.
Pretty easy to travel.
He's a good trooper. My children were my dad would take them straight into the rainforest.
That's awesome.
Cynthia, in reading your booklet, there you mentioned someone with the name Topsy.
That's my husband.
Well, but earlier it was somebody you met, I thought, when you were younger. Or, well, was there somebody else Topsy, or was your husband?
Well, he's my husband and his family. We grew up in the same area. That family.
Start going anytime.
Welcome to El Pilar, the ceiba tree. Along with your families. Okay. And of course Jerry Waite and his family.
Midwives in Petén in Las Cruces, Guatemala. I'm just his wife, and he's interested in this stuff. I'm just here for the ride. I didn't know what we were doing today. I just followed him around.
This side on
Getting inside. This side is farmer's land.
Yes,
So
yes.
here is
And to get an idea of, you know, right.
I want a copy. Get it from her.
60 acres already surveyed. When you reach there, we give a report to the Institute of Archaeology. The Institute of Archaeology came.
I got there because I gave the cookies but I have a drawing I made in 1995 that shows all the pillars.
So you were saying in Brazil, the name of it again is?
Ernst Gotch, Syntropic Agroforestry or Syntropic Farming.
And it's a documentary.
Life in Syntropy is maybe like a 2016 or 2017 documentary about it.
How do you spell Syntrop? How do you spell it?
Yeah, Syntropy.
Okay, great. Mind saying that sentence one more time?
Okay, but I want to show. I can do it over here.
Okay, I'll catch up with you.
Yeah.
I have not backfilled here. I have not really consolidated. Here's a wall. Here's a wall. This was the way. If you came in this way, you would. And look at when I talk about how things fall down. Gravity, not just a good idea. These are part of the building, are just falling down on the side. Here's actually the staircase. But I better watch out because I want to make monuments of ruins, not ruins of monuments. So let's be careful here. Right now, we've got nice shade, but these haven't been consolidated formally. They're just exposed.
Nice.
We call it. This is the plaster floor. You can see all along here that this is built on top of. You see here. Here's our poor little guys. This is the end of the first one. They added on a second. This was a building. They built it. Then this.
Can you guys see?
Yeah.
They built this. This is the spring of the vault. Remember me talking about the spring of the vault? And look you can see the vault not falling down. That's very, very unusual.
Can you light the bats?
This is pretty much, the beds.
Anabel, could you say again what this might have been used for?
Got it.
These are temples.
Thank you.
No, it's something that happened in the last 500
One
years.
more
But here is
lighting this way, if you will.
this is all the Mexicans
Thank you,
use
that's good.
inside is you're supposed to, the argument with consolidation
Yes.
is that you're supposed to know where it was consolidated from what was original, but the other part is that it shouldn't take away from the visual impact of the building. And I mean, this to me takes away.
Oh,
from it.
totally.
And look at this one.
Yeah.
Now these were looters trying to hack away, but I say this is, you know something different about here than here, but this is really, if you take a picture, all you see is that.
Yeah.
And that's not how it should be. That was just a design. These Mexicans decided to put, I mean, it was the
No.
first time. I mean, I let them do what they wanted to do so I could see. Yeah, I wasn't involved. I was not looking at consolidation. But this was their style. They took a piece of limestone and they sharpened it and made it very visible. But you can tell where we worked and where we didn't, but it's very obvious. Now we're walking on a floor that was open to the Maya at one time. Now when we excavate, how come this is buried? You might, and also this is a wall that goes all the way out. The buildings that are on the outside of this all fell down. If you look, it's very steep there. They collapsed down.
Did you say whether you know how this room was used?
Well, initially it was a walking way to get from this plaza to the other plaza, probably to emerge, you know, ceremonially, you want, in grand thing, out into that big plaza that way. But over time, they were trying to rebuild this big one with the Looter's Trench, and they couldn't keep it open. So in the end, it was a hallway. And when I came here, when we were here the first 2 years, I would close this up. Some people would get in all the time. So I said, if you can't lick them, join them. So I decided I was excavating. But all of the debris, remember that? It's not just a good idea, it's the law. A ceramic face that was on an effigy, just cut out of the piece of pottery. And other, you know, different things. But as we went in, of course, we had to take out all the guano. But also, it was basically used, I think, as a trash. I don't know if it was de facto or a party that they didn't want to bring all the stuff down. But I have lots of different things that I wouldn't find normally, perhaps one that we excavated over there. But this is all the collapse of the buildings on this side. This is excavated half. Here you can see this, if you move away and look at this, you can see, if you look closely, you see my little,
Yes.
those are the signs of my area where to consolidate, I had to do something here. Like I had this stone, but I didn't have this stone.
Yeah.
And so I consolidated. But if you look from where you are, it's not obvious. It's not like that big line. But if you look and inspect, you can see where it is that these are aluminum.
Oh yeah, you can see. Yes.
But it doesn't detract from the whole thing.
Oh, not at all. Probably if you wouldn't have pointed out, I don't know.
Yeah, you might not see it.
Right.
So like this thing, we had to, it was this tall, but to make this make sense, we had to put in some of that.
Yeah.
This is a fancy, big bench that goes all the way through here. But this is all collapse of the same building. So you can see, also, another thing you can notice is just like when you have a pile of sand or sugar or whatever, that the slant the natural slant is the natural slant we see here.
Right.
This is also interesting to see what happened here. I get some more water as were made. Other people have more water. I don't say much.
And why would they plaster? To hold it? What?
It's beautiful.
Okay.
It's a way. Why do you plaster your wall?
Well, I'm asking you to say it on camera. I'm not going to tell it.
Well, I mean, clearly and this is, you can see some of the plasters left. I mean, it's just the way they finished up. And sometimes it would be red, like I encountered.
They use paints.
Yeah, they could be painted, but red is very common. Red is an easy, they didn't paint with many colors.
Obviously, they're all natural colors.
Yeah.
If they, paint bright.
I mean, that's why Bonampak is so unusual, is that they're really very rare to get polychromes like that. Red is very common. And like more.
You look fine. You look very authentic.
I look authentic. Yeah. Lucrative, very desired.
And I just started. So looting became popular when?
Looting, I wouldn't say probably, became a problem in the early 70s. I don't think, I look at maps, for example, a map of a site I called Corozal, only at 4 kilometers from Tikal, mapped by two other archaeologists in 1968, and there's not a single evidence of looting. And when I got there in 78, it had many, many looters' trenches.
And a minor
So
in entrepreneurship.
sometime between in that 10-year period. But in 1972, it became a UNESCO convention that ancient monuments, that is, you know, the stela, could not be traded without, sold without, proper permits. And in fact, the LACMA, the LA County Art Museum, had purchased, but accepted the purchase after the U.S. signed that agreement, and it was the Machakila stela, and that stela had been recorded in situ by Ian Graham. I think I was talking about him earlier, and of course they had to come forward with either, because you wouldn't get you would be halted all your federal funding if you accepted looted items. It was all in peace. They just don't have the same interest, you know.
Oh,
And they're
hold on.
lazy. Who are these four people? Oh, it's five. Is it four and a what?
Four and a half.
Four and a half. Do we call him a people? Are you a people?
In a few more months.
Yeah, I would think that
6
they're
months.
coming right up.
Yeah, he's.
A little Guatemalteco. I have L2R.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a nut problem.
Yeah.
It's 41, and look at it. Hasn't done This is very nice. How often do you wait to cut your hair?
Oh, my hair?
Yeah. My hair, I don't have to worry.
Oh, yeah. Maybe like every 2 weeks I'll just go in and they'll shave the side.
Grows slower. Yeah, some Belizeans was telling me that again.
Well, maybe not.
Maybe.
Well, we know that the moon has ebbs and flows, you know.
Exactly.
So it's not. You know, I was thinking.
The planting too.
Yeah, you plant in the full moon, but
Exactly.
it grows more. And
Christopher Nesbitt at Maya Mountain Research Farm
In Belize.
in Belize. Yeah,
And he does forest gardening.
yeah. He does forest gardening. I think he has something like. Well, yeah, better to talk with him. But on the order of over a dozen acres.
Where are we here?
Plaza Faisan, the way to Gumbo Limbo, the only way if you were uninvited,
yeah.
you couldn't make it. And you know, when you think about this, is the dry season, it should be very, it should be green, but they need one, you know.
Yeah.
Annabelle, let me get you saying that. So where are we here?
Plaza Copal. This is the winged temple, fondly called EP7, and it's the one we have a tunnel through. We can go in 2024 here and walk back 3,000 years onto a plaza that was open to the sky, not 22 meters above, not there, from the earliest days of El Pilar, which were built in a different way. This plaza plan probably came into existence, let's say, I don't know, 200 BC.
And is there of El Pilar?
Well, I mean, it's where the public, I mean, no. There are three components of the main El Pilar. You have the southern part we call Nojol Pilar. We have the power center, which is called Shaman Pilar. And we have Pilar Poniente over there connected by the causeway. So there are three major monumental components that are being managed and worked on and grown in the Lake Classic. There are other components that are earlier and probably maintained, like the Citadel. And there are three ball courts here. One we'll walk through in a moment, one in the middle of the offset causeway, and one in Pilar Poniente. Pilar Poniente is great, but to walk over there, I don't even know how we'd get it right now.
Tell me again, what's this hill here?
This is an ancient Maya, I guess, palace structure. It has a palace. It has a 5-door palace on the top, and then this big staircase that goes up. And
you've since backfilled it.
Yeah, this was open, and in 1995, and we actually went down quite deep here, but never got to bedrock because we hit these I'll call them construction bins, and they're filled. They put, very simple walls, and then they fill it with like cobbles, and you really can't you can't really get through that without shoring, so we couldn't do that. But over here we got down to bedrock.
Okay, thank you. 1 second.
Southerly,
We're going where?
to Plaza Xcanan, which is the most southerly plaza, and this plaza probably was a more regal location. Some people might think it was actually like Tsunun, but the most royal housing. I don't know, but it has an appeal, which I hope you will see when we get there.
You're fine there.
That side, all the way in the front, and that you could also on the top of EP10, the first one we were talking about, and here. So when we get into here, I want you to be able to look at those saddles and know every saddle is showing you where the doorway is and showing you a room. It's not going to go through. This is lower because, and this, you see again the way this looks. This, I mean, obviously this went higher. This had a corbelled arch. You see how low this is? Mm-hmm. Obviously, when the water got through here, cracked the ceiling. It fell out, and the ceiling fell down. When this was clean, you could see the corbel pieces in there.
Did you say, were you kidding when you said it's a security guard?
Well, I'm suggesting that.
Yeah,
They didn't check my security thing. But,
sorry, excuse me for asking questions.
no, that's okay, but I just want you to say that I feel very much this is a restricted area, mm-hmm. and this is a special spot.
Makes sense, no?
And they view over the public area, but you're not going to be invited here. I mean, you're going to, at least if you are, you're going to have to go through the clearance, like the stops of the military or whatever.
Yeah. No, but look at the view.
Yeah. Well, and if you can imagine. Oh, I don't know where this comes from, but see how it's angled? This is not a square, so it probably came from a corbel. You know how it's looking? Mm-hmm. It's interesting, the looters went right into the rooms, so they must have known that the points weren't pyramids, but the rooms were. So the what I call saddles, and saddles, those are where the room lintel gave way. The back is the spline wall. So the spline wall only is breached right here. This one was much lower. If you look, you can see it was. I mean, you can, if you look at the points here, this was much lower. You knew, you had a hint that you came through. This is different. It's much higher. But that's the room. We know we've excavated open those rooms. And you can see how the wall in that, what I call the security room. You didn't notice that it was all like that?
I didn't, no.
Oh my God, I should have said something. But it's got really hard leaves, very like the faisan, and but this is the bulb of the tun. Tun is rock. Tun.
By the way, do I have your permission to be in some of the shots?
Yeah.
Thank you. Do I have your permission for being in some of the shots here?
Yes, you do.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes, you do.
I was thinking before we leave, if there's like maybe right there, we could ask each person what their impression of El Pilar
good.
was.
Okay.
Because I think it's really important that I mean, it's a place you use imagination. It's not like every other place, but maybe.
We should say something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's a nice family. Look at the little ones. I have never seen so many. There's more coming. They're all heading. Where are they heading?
Yeah, they're
Oh my gosh.
crossing.
It's like 10. There's a baby on the back.
So cute.
You see it?
Yeah.
Where are they stopping? They're stopping in a tree. They must be eating. I've never seen so many.
Here comes another.
Oh no, they're going over here. I see them. Well, it's just looking up, you know, and it's on.
Good eye. You got the whole caravan. Oh,
Leap of faith. Well, I guess some of the branches they test first and then they go for it. That's cool.
We missed that. They're
there
trying.
you go.
There must be some really cool food there.
Oh, hey.
Wow.
They're on the ground for food.
Well, I don't know enough about them. But yeah, let's go. That's pretty darn cool.
That was great.
Their silhouettes are perfect.
Great to know.
Yeah, what a beautiful finish.
What did you think of the finish here?
I called in I just said let's get those spiders in and entertain people, you know, and I really felt, you know, Audrey can't be here alone with her baby. Let's see some other babies.
Nice.
That was cool.
What did you say?
But I don't think it's
So, Louise,
501, 601.
you don't want to go there.
I will go there when I
Do they live up here?
You know, I was just.
So, where are we going now?
We're going to a place I call Pilar. In 1995, when we put the boundaries here, the several properties south of El Pilar were parceled out. And sometime later, I can't remember how much later, but that property was for sale, and this man named Fred Eaton ultimately buys it. I met him on one of, I don't know, I gave a lecture in Philadelphia or something, met this man, said he was looking for someplace in Belize, so somehow he gets interested and he buys that property. But a couple of years ago, he started having a problem health-wise and had to consider selling it. He didn't want to, but he couldn't afford to keep it. You're not doing enough work on a normal day. You have to do your.
Oh yeah.
So how's the work? I haven't been able to see you apart. You like it?
Yeah.
Great. This one just can't help but bark. Let's get out and see
Has he been here? Has he seen it?
Yeah.
Hey, doggy. But she chases my cat, so I couldn't keep her. No, you don't jump. Shh. No.
I don't know if you know that, but you know, down in the area where the Welcome Center is in San Ignacio, there's the little feed store on the corner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they sell that stuff.
They sell as an injection. Oh yeah, I buy that. It's very sweet.
Is it not the thing they eat? No. I don't really give an injection.
I tried, so I had somebody else do it.
Okay, well that's not.
Yeah, no, I couldn't do it either. I tried.
Come on down here. We'll just sit for a moment.
Okay.
Oh, let's see. Does he have? I'll ask him for it. No. Let's see. ¿Hay juegos?
Yes, I get some.
Okay. All a bit funky, but it has great pictures.
So this place is for sale right now.
No, it's sold.
Oh, gotcha.
To the person, Luis Marcos,
Okay.
who was looking for a place. I donated the funds. Walk around, you can see it's funky. I should take you to the real. I rather.
Thank you for photograph. Sometimes I come and I clean it, but those chickens who once you go away.
Yeah. Okay.
Hi, Pudge.
She still cowers with some of those doggies, doesn't she? But she doesn't have to be tied up anymore, huh?
No.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so.
She just doesn't want to. But now that Ishtabur doesn't want to share. No. You gotta share. You gotta share. So this is now in new hands.
Sorry. Just me. Sorry, doggy.
Got here and the solid people, it's great, and really things get done, but in the end, I'm feeling pretty exhausted. What I really should do is come up here and stay in hammock. And forget, I have a great picture, or I saw a great picture of Mooch in the hammock like that. Okay, well, I'm supposed to be down by 6, I see, so. Oh, better. Well, I mean, but I'm not is fine, but.
So only you coming tomorrow, or?
I don't know. A whole team on. So if either I come up or probably after we work, we come up here. So if you have your drinks around, anyone who's not driving can have drinks. But I don't think so. I will bring. I have a bunch of flour tortillas and cheese, but. But I mean, if I bring it, then you can join us, right? Whatever you want, but I'll bring the cheese and we can. What are you doing? She looks so much bigger. Did she grow? Huh? Did she grow?
Maybe a bag of ice will be good if I meet
I probably won't have. If I had a bag of ice, it will be it'll be.
Okay.
It'll be. I mean, if I brought it in the morning, it'd be melted by the evening.
Okay.
Don't work. I said the one thing about this place, it has to be cleaned up. But my idea of clean is a different thing. There's no trash. I don't mind the woods,